Welcome everyone into another episode of the New Mexico State Aggies one-star rebuild dynasty here on NCAA Football 14. Today is the year 2 off-season finally. After a disappointing loss in the bowl game against Oregon State, we'll go and give you a quick rundown of things to come here in the dynasty and some of the projects I'm currently working on. So this footage in the background will be me working my way through the off-season here in year 2, getting us prepped for year 3, and I'm going to kind of have a little bit of a sit-down and discussion, me talking to you guys, the viewers, about what we can kind of look forward to. So obviously this team loses a lot to graduation here this season. Amari Samuels was a huge factor of the offense. In my opinion, should have won the Heisman. Almost 30 rushing scores. He was near the 2,400-yard rushing mark. He was an absolute animal for us on the dynasty, and we're going to miss him sorely. But we do have some running backs in the backfield I feel that will fill in nicely. Let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball now. Devin Richardson, Devlin Kirkland, and Jason Simmons Jr. will all return for senior seasons next year. Devin Richardson's definitely going to have to anchor the defense this year more so than he did last year. He was very spotty and what I thought was an average second year. Ethan Alberson was a constant weapon for us, able to bury a ton of field goals, led the nation in longest field goal at 58 yards. We'll see if we can get him maybe a 6-yard make this year. As we take a look at the school records this year, we did have a couple of them fall, so it's very exciting to see. Amari Samuels both the rushing touchdown and career record, the rushing touchdowns in a season record, and owed the overall rushing yards in a season record, which now sit at 3827 and 2302 respectively. So before we get into it much further, guys, we're going to go ahead and enter the coaching carousel. Now, we kind of anticipated us losing our offensive coordinator this year. He had a maxed out skill tree, so I anticipate that he'd be gone. And the big question is who we're going to bring in to replace him. If we're going to get another high-quality hire, or if we're just going to another Joe Schmo off the street. As you take a look at the screen here, Matt Campbell gets hired to California. My Iowa State Cyclones, how are we doing? Can't wait to see you guys playing the Big 12 title game this year. They get Josh Heupel from UCF. As we kind of continue down the list here, I'm going to skip ahead and edit the video to where we kind of see some of the highlight hires from our conference and maybe some people coming into the conference. So I'll see you guys when we make our first jump cut. So as you see here, UNLV gets a new head coach, and the big first hire was Kansas State hiring Gary Patterson, the University of New Mexico head coach. So our rival's head coach is moving on. Chris Kleineman got fired after failing to meet his goals. They give him a 5-year contract, and they're going to run that spread offense up in Kansas State. UNLV gets hired over at Northwestern, and head coach Lance Anderson is the new man in Wyoming. So that, of course, addresses the question, leaves the question, who's going to be the new head man here in New Mexico? Derek Warmy will be the head man in New Mexico. Keep in mind, we have never lost a game to New Mexico in this dynasty. We are currently 3-0 against our rivals, the Lobos. As we continue down the list here, we head up Texas A&M. Interesting note for them is that we will be playing them this season. For those of you that followed the dynasty, we developed a storyline that Weston Eggett, the quarterback, formerly starter in year 1, did indeed sit out year 2 to transfer, and he will be the head man at Texas A&M when we play them this season. Now on to Idaho, as Chris Klinovich is the new head man in Idaho after Terry Malone was fired and making his goals. One of the proud dad moments of this dynasty is that I moved Idaho into the Mountain West Conference with us to kind of balance out the divisions, nothing more, nothing less. They were a 55 overall team when they first joined the Mountain West Conference. They went 2 years without a win. We beat them by almost 50 on our senior night in year 1. In year 2, we got them 41-7. But they finally won a game for their senior class in the last game of the regular season on senior night. They were able to beat San Jose State 14-13. And I was never prouder to see a team develop over that time. As you also get a quick look at their new coordinators. Charlie Fry is their new offensive coordinator from UConn, and their new defensive coordinator is Rob Ackey from. So we advance on here into the off-season. We're going to go ahead and jump into the next week where we take a look at the players currently leaving our program, either by graduation or by transferring. So hopefully everyone stays put. Nobody does anything foolish and transfers. and we can able to retain our talent. I didn't anticipate many people transferring this year other than Weston Eggett, who I've already moved over to the Texas A&M roster. You can't force someone to transfer, so I went ahead and just copied his attributes and put him on a redshirt junior quarterback already on Texas A&M's roster. So we go ahead and take a look at I believe we're going to do coach changes first. I would be incorrect. My past self throwing my future self a curveball. We take a look at the players currently leaving our program: Drew Dan, Rich Hall, Trevor Brohard, Williams, Tolis, Michael Young. There's just so many key pieces on this team that we're not going to have next year. Xavier Hinkle, another big corner. Tevis Abraham, our go-get-it wide receiver. Azaris Williams, Michael Bowe Jr., our stud at right outside. And of course, the crown jewel, Omari Samuels, will be moving on. The big question is, will he get drafted after his stellar senior season? I think it'd be enough to get him at least a 7th round draft pick, but obviously this game is kind of wonky on how it selects its draft picks. He's not a very high overall, and I think that may be a deal breaker for some teams. But we'll definitely be looking forward to what he kind of brings to an NFL roster. As we now move into the coaching changes here in the Mountain West Conference, we look at all the jobs. So you take a look at the new coordinators, do a quick scroll down the list. If you see a favorite team on here or a team you're interested, please feel free to pause the video. I'm very interested to see what Idaho's going to do this year. Are they going to have another, just get kicked in, game out type of season? Or are they going to finally be able to build off something? They finally got their 1 win. Next step, they got to get 2 or 3, and they got to try and start recruiting now. They've had 2 years inside the Mountain West cycle and being able to recruit off that perk and not being an independent. So I'm really looking for Idaho to try and make a jump and maybe get a team or 2. Another team I'm looking forward to do big things would be Wyoming. They finished right behind us in the standings. I think they finished 5-3 in the Mountain West Mountain Division. Obviously, us and Nevada. It came down to those 2 teams to determine who was going to win that division. But that was basically a 3-game playoff stretch for our Aggies right there. And unfortunately, you guys didn't get to catch the Wyoming game due to a capture card failing me. But it was a spectacular game, and I just can't wait to see what the Cowboys are going to bring in. They still have Sean Chambers. They do graduate Zazavian Valladay, their star tailback. I do anticipate him probably going pro. Through that last sequence, though, you saw Ivan Jasper, our new offensive coordinator. 18 total points on his skill tree, maxed out in terms of ground game, holding onto the ball, up tempo. He will be more than satisfactory for us in our offense this year. The big question is, who's going to be carrying the ball, and is Slade Larson ready to carry this offense if he needs to? So as we jump ahead here into the next window, we're advancing to our transfer request window. I don't believe we're going to have many transfer opportunities to come in this year. We just got so young and so talented because we had a lot of transfers come in last year. Ronnie Sanders II, Cam Brown is now finally eligible to play the Texas A&M wide receiver transfer, and he will be a lot of fun. First things first, however, we have to take a look at the pro draft results. I believe when I went through this window, I just tried to look for the Mountain West Conference teams. Khalil Shakir, that man gave us all sorts of problems in the 2 games we played against Boise State in our last 2 seasons. David Bailey and Hunter Long both go pro. We played 2 games against Boston College in the non-conference. That was kind of a little bit of a developing rivalry after Weston Eggett nearly heroically led us back to a win on homecoming, but Boston College had our number that night. Let's take a look at not a whole lot of pro prospects coming out in the Mountain West, which I was kind of surprised. We did not play Hawaii this year, so we missed out on playing them, and they have a very good quarterback returning as a senior. Siobhan Cordero is going to be a beast for the Rainbow Warriors this year, and hopefully we get a cross-divisional game with them this season. Romeo Dubes, the star wide receiver from Nevada, 93 overall, he goes pro. No pros for the Lobos. So as we keep scrolling down here, we're looking at possible teams. Oregon State, we played them. They get 2 pros and a strong safety and left tackle. That team was a very good team, and we were just not ready to play them. That is a good Pac-12 team. They just had a 6-6 season, and I think that was very deceiving of just how good that team was. Continuing down here, you see Randall Grimes, another team we didn't play this season in UNLV, but is in our conference. They have a good wide receiver go from Battle Mountain, Wyoming. Utah, a team we could possibly play this next season. I've been looking at teams kind of in the Pac-12, in that western area, maybe a little bit down south, but we could kind of get some interesting non-conference matchups going in. And as you see here, Xavier Valladay goes in the second round out of Chicago, Illinois. A running back from Wyoming does his thing, and he is now an NFL prospect. So coming up now onto your screen, we have the recruiting window and the recruiting class we have this season. We filled out all 25 of our scholarships. I anticipate maybe a couple of these guys playing pretty early. Lionel Jenkins was a really good outside linebacker that we were able to get into this class. Josh Hawthorne will not compete for the starting quarterback job, but he's really there as an emergency kind of guy. But we stuck to our philosophy. We got big guards, long corners, some big targets at wide receiver, some 6'5", 6'6" guys. Some speedy defensive ends. This was just a very down-to-earth recruiting class. Not a lot of big names, but a lot of these guys are going to be very good depth pieces for this dynasty going forward. And so for those kind of wondering, where was the recruiting episode this season, I have to apologize. We never really got around to filming one, so I was just going to kind of spitball it when they get up and more developed, because a lot of these guys, other than Lionel Jenkins, will really be sitting for about 3 or 4 years because of the in-depth recruiting we've done the prior 2 seasons. So I really think that their best opportunity to shine would maybe if we get like a prospect profile on them the season before they're maybe really expected to play big minutes for us on the field. So we now jump into position changes. This is where we kind of have to finagle the roster a little bit, move around the minimums and maximums of players that we have. So you see Weston Eggett, I moved him over to fullback, I believe, here, just so we're eligible to cut him because I've already copied and pasted his design onto a different quarterback at A&M, and we will be playing him come next season. Take a look at our running back depth. Boom Williams is going to be a big factor this offseason. He was a true freshman last year. We slapped a red shirt on him, so he didn't lose a year of eligibility. So he's a red shirt freshman this year. The 6', 235-pound running back out of Casa Grande, Arizona, could be the next big running back in our backfield. And when I mean big, that means metaphorically and literally. This dude is a load to bring down. I really think we could get a thunder and lightning dynamic going in the backfield this year. We have a ton of speed at some backs and a ton of power at others, so maybe it'll be a little more running back by committee with Navion Mitchell with his elite speed and Boom Williams with his elite trucking and break tackle. As we kind of continue down the roster here, we now sit at quarterback. Slade Larson will retain his starting spot to start the season. He's going to get a year's worth of development, so I'm anticipating about a 70-71 overall jump for him. At fullback now, nothing doing there, but Cam Brown, the Texas A&M transfer wide receiver, is finally eligible to play. So our receiving core and our top 3 will be Brown, Powers, and Starks to start the season. Justice Powers, who is a big receiving target for us in year 1, had to sit out a year to be moved back to wide receiver after he played tight end for us when we didn't have any on the roster. So he's got a year's worth of catching and blocking development now. He's going to be a big-time player for us in this receiving core, and that's where I feel like we're going to win and lose a lot of games. If we come down with the case of the drops again this season, a lot of these games are going to be closer than they should be. As we kind of quickly cycle through the offensive line, I kind of play with this a little bit, try and balance it out so each one has an upperclassman, a junior, sophomore, and then a freshman. It doesn't always work out like that with this next recruiting class we'll have for coming in for the year 3 offseason. I anticipate a lot more offensive line. It'll be a less glamorous recruiting class, and you'll definitely get an in-depth look at them. But this time around, there just wasn't huge many signings. Lionel Jenkins is going to be a stud for us at left outside linebacker. But we'll talk about him more when we get there. Let's take a look. We're kind of cycling through the ends now, and we're just kind of doing the thing where we just kind of have to hover around and see where we have talent where and where we can maybe spare to send some to a different position. As we kind of jump ahead here, I run into Jeremy Miller, who is a 60 overall recruit. He was listed as a true athlete, the 6'3", 242-pound prospect out of Grand LeBlanc, Michigan. I really had no idea where to put him. We had good depth everywhere he was listed as a good player at, but I wasn't about to throw him somewhere he wasn't going to excel. So I really had to kind of think a little bit, and I thought about maybe throwing him on the defensive end just because of his good pass rush moves in terms of finesse. He also had a little bit of coverage skills, so maybe we could play him at end and drop him into coverage. Running back, I knew wasn't going to be his home because we just had too much depth there. Tight end and wide receiver, I just didn't love his size. As we continue down the line, you see I'm kind of playing with the idea of him at end, maybe linebacker. His highest listed overall position, I believe, was safety. We have Tyson Archer, a recruit from 2 years ago. We've got so much depth there, and that's the thing with this New Mexico State Aggies team. We just have a ton of depth at a ton of different positions. But we finally settle on him at linebacker, and we'll go ahead and get continuing on with the offseason. As you see now, we're into the training results window here. We'll go and jump in, and you take a look. We have our first 90 overall player in Ethan Alberson, the senior kicker out of San Diego, California. So a big-time boost here for our quarterbacks, as Slade Larson's able to go up 6, became more aware this offseason. Jamal Parrish didn't progress the way I thought he possibly could. I thought he could be like a smaller Jonah Johnson type caliber quarterback, very mobile, maybe only has to throw on the run when he has to. We'd be a designed spread team around him. But I feel like Slade Larson really complements the stable of running backs we have and their versatility this year. So it was a big thing to see him get some plus throw power here and a lot more to accuracy. Continuing on here into the running back core, Navion Mitchell, Jawan Price, Boom Williams and company, and Ray Jackson are the running backs that made the cut this season. Boom Williams goes up 6 overall to be a 70, Jawan Price goes to an 80, and Navion Mitchell to an 82. Now, if you've been following the Dynasty for a while now, you know I really don't pay attention to overall. I really like the talents that each individual prospect can bring to the table. So for Boom Williams, if that's in between the tackle running hard with his head down, that's the type of offense me we have to run if we're going to have him excel. And I think Navion Mitchell would be a great spread, pace, and space and pace running back. A lot of screen plays, maybe quick tosses, stretch plays, anything to get his speed onto the edges, where Omari Samuels really thrived as he was our fastest running back a season ago. Taking a look into the wide receiving core, Cam Brown, Justice Powers, Thomas Stark, Smith, and Obadiah Anderson all get some attribute boosts here. Cam Brown is expected to be our top target going into the season if you're looking at just purely from a wide receiver standpoint. I also think that he could have a lot of compliments between him and Powers. Cam Brown's not nearly as tall as Justice Powers, but he's got way more speed, and Powers really could be that dynamic X, while Cam Brown comes in as that underneath the Z or Y. Now into my pride and joy. I take pride in my offensive line, and these guys may be the best all-around group in the country. They were sophomores when we took them over. They're now sitting as a group of juniors and there's a group of seniors, and we only have one junior at right tackle. So this is an offensive line that has gelled together for going on to 3 seasons now. They've developed together. They know the system. This should be one of the more dominant offensive lines in the country, which is why I'm so excited to have a really good running back core this year. As we shift now into the custom conferences phase of the offseason draws to a close here. We take a look at our division and the West Division. The West Division was far less competitive than the Mountain Division this year, so maybe some changes will be needed to happening if that continues to persist. I hate having like an unbalanced conference. Don't get me wrong, I love our competitive edge that we have in the Mountain Division and the excitement it brings to the videos. Like we said, it took us to win out to get to where we were this season. But I just feel like the West Division needs to have a team really step forward this year, or a team or two step forward this year. And maybe that's why in New Mexico again. But I feel like they need a San Jose State or UNLV, a team that gets off to a really good non-conference start, to try and push those two teams to be even better. Because we had 2 teams finish in the top 25 on our end. We didn't have any in the West Division do that. Only one team in that division even got ranked this year, and that was New Mexico for a singular week until we beat them. So once again, guys, as the offseason schedule making finally comes to a close, Texas A&M on the road will be our Week 1 opponent. Then we follow up with our first road trip. We do get a cross-divisional rivalry game with Hawaii this season, so that'll be fun against Siobhan Cordero. SMU, Air Force, and New Mexico. We have 3 at home after 2 in a row to open the season, so that's a big home stretch for our Aggies. Air Force did beat us at home last season, and then finally we open with a bye week, 3 straight on the road with BYU, Utah State, and Boise State, and then close with 3 at home with Colorado State, Wyoming, Idaho, and Nevada. On the road at Nevada for their senior night. So once again, guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the New Mexico State Aggies 1-Star Rebuild Dynasty. I will see you guys next time when it's year 3, game 1 against Texas A&M.